Welcome back to the channel, KMR. We're talking rotary. We're all about that BRAP. And since I've covered a lot of the previous generations and changes in rotors, from 12A to 13B, turbo, Renesis, one of the things I haven't covered is early rotors. And there are some very interesting design characteristics and changes that have happened from the early rotor technology. And this is one of your early 12As. It's a 6mm apex seal, so substantially thicker than any of the later generation 12As, which went to a 3mm, and 13Bs that went to 3mm, and then eventually 2mm. And when we talk about the millimeter of an apex seal, I think it gets confusing, but we're talking about the width, not the height. So the width is what has changed over the years, and gradually Mazda has gotten thinner and thinner, basically reducing the weight of the apex seal, reducing chatter, and changing compounds. Your early rotors were actually using a carbon-based, I believe, carbon metallic apex seal. It did not last substantially long and actually was more brittle than the later model apex seals that we see in 12As, 13Bs, or Renesis engines. So your early Mazda motors really did have apex seal reliability issues. And as the technology got better, it's gotten more reliable to where we're at today, where we have unbreakable apex seals. They bend, they don't shatter, and they're made from alloy versus carbon. But your early rotors, 6mm carbon, substantially wide, and if you've been glancing at the rotor while I've been talking, you'll notice it's actually a twin side seal design. So obviously Mazda was playing with sealing opportunities, trying to create, I think, the best sealing potential. And just not that long later, you can see as the more typical late 70s to mid-80s 12A, which was mass-produced as a single side seal, 3mm apex seal with the traditional height that's been carried on till about 1999, and had basically the pattern that we see in the majority of your RX7s, although they did reduce the width, like I said, to a 2mm, and obviously from 12A we went to 13B and combustion pockets changed. But it was really the early motors that had the most wild, most unique layout. Twin side seal, carbon apex seal, which you can see this one's actually still locked in there, a little piece of history, which was a very interesting carbon metallic material. And then the combustion pocket, although it's rusty, you can see was a heavily shaped pocket, almost two depths. You have your initial pocket here, which is very similar to the 12A pocket, and then the pocket continues a lot further, creating a square edge. And so a very unique combustion pocket. I'm not sure what Mazda was trying to do there, but obviously they had intention in its shaping and firing and combustion process, which had been changed into the 12As, 13Bs, which became basically a symmetrical pocket like we see in the Renesis or in the FD3S. But I thought this was really unique. I've had it kicking around on the shelf. I've got some old vintage rotor components as well that we can maybe look at. But a lot to be learned as we move now into the opportunity and I think the possibilities of making billet rotors. We can look to the past and see what didn't work, what worked. Obviously the webbing internally still very similar through all of the Mazda castings. And that's part of the internal structure for strength and the oil cavity. And I think it was part of Mazda's intentional design to keep the oil from staying in the rotor as it spins, because that oil is part of the balanced weight, and it is a moving liquid weight inside the rotor. You can see they're trapping it in very specific parts to keep the rotor balanced while in rotation. Very similar to how they've done it as they've continued up through the different generations. Bearings very similar. Oil control ring area very similar, although we did get a little bit more pocketing here. And then in the latest RX8 rotors, you've actually got the scraper ring, but that's really pertinent to the side exhaust, which obviously neither of these motors ever had. They were peripheral style exhaust. But lots going on. gear and roll pinning, very similar. So you can see Mazda carried on with basically setting the stationary gear in with roll pins, which does allow a slight amount of movement. And the early rotors, you did have a issue where the gears would tend to walk out in race application, but I've never really seen that happen in any of the later Model 13B stuff, although we do watch for it. And Racing Beat at one point had a snap ringing process to lock the gear in, although I've never seen that necessary in the applications that I run rotaries in, but I always believe that they were obviously working to avoid certain problems, potential high RPM, naturally aspirated, lightweight rotors of early generations where you just didn't have as many roll pins, or maybe the roll pins were a little bit weaker. Could have been a lot of the issues, but 1,000 horsepower 3 rotors running late model rotors, we don't have any issues with gear walk, but we always watch for it because it was a piece of history and what has been dealt with in the rotary industry. So if anybody's got questions, definitely comment below. You can see obviously this rotor was involved in some type of probably water seal failure. Seals got locked up, things got damaged, probably dropped right here. That's not running wear, but you can see that the apex seal itself still does have some very interesting wear, got its edges squared off. You know, there probably was some type of running fatigue or failure that led to this motor being shelved and being a rusty old motor. But how cool. Early 12A, probably twin distributor, 6mm apex seal, twin side seal, carbon rotary rotor. All right, that's a wrap. We've talked about it. It's got spider webs. Like I said, comment below. Thanks for watching the channel. We've got a bunch of new projects in the works, and we've got a bunch of existing projects and cool parts that we're always talking about. All right, that's a wrap. We are wrapped. It's a rotor for a motor.